With me is Joyce Hoppus from the Iowa Pork Producers Association. Welcome, Joyce.
Great to be here.
Pork is one of my favorite foods, and I imagine it's also nutritious. Is that correct?
Most definitely. It's a very nutrient-dense food. It's a great source of protein and the B vitamins thiamine and niacin and several minerals. All of these are important in maintaining a healthy body.
Okay, now you can just look at this and tell, but today's pork is a lot leaner than it was in the past, correct?
It sure is. It's lower in fat and much leaner too, and that's a result of pork producers responding to consumers' desires for leaner pork. Today's pork is actually 16% lower in fat and 27% lower in saturated fat than just 15 years ago. In fact, we have 6 cuts that are very common cuts that meet the USDA guidelines for lean. They are pork tenderloin, chops, and roast, as well as some of the bone-in ones.
Okay, how does pork compare to other meats?
Pork compares well with other meats in fat, calories, and cholesterol. In fact, a boneless tenderloin is comparable and as lean as a skinless chicken breast today.
Well, that's great news. Do you have any tips for including pork in a healthful diet?
Absolutely. You know, the first thing to do is to select lean cuts. And since most of the cuts from the loin are very lean, we recommend that you look for the word loin on the label when you're at the meat case.
Okay, so look for loin, and what else do we need to do?
Second would be to remember portion size. Most nutritionists recommend a moderate 3-ounce portion, and that's going to be very comparable to the size of the palm of your hand or the size of a deck of cards.
Okay.
And the third thing would be to cook it right. Use low-fat cooking methods, and some of those are broiling, roasting, grilling. The main thing is to remember is not to add a lot of fat during the preparation. Pork's not only lean and healthful, but it's very versatile and flavorful. There are so many different options when it comes to pork, and let's just take a look at a few of them. Let's start with pork chops.
Okay.
You know, pork chops are a favorite of a lot of people, and when you go to the meat case, there's lots of different choices out there.
Right.
You know, you have bone-in and boneless. That's a choice. We also have thick cut, thin cut, rib chops.
Tell me a bit about pork roast.
Well, you know, with pork roast, there are as many choices with roast as there are with chops. We have bone-in and boneless versions. We have some that come packaged like this, and we're seeing this in the supermarket a lot. It's vacuum packaging, and that's done at the processing plant.
Okay.
One way to save money when cooking and buying roast is to actually buy a whole loin. Like this, boneless loin. And you see these in the supermarket a lot.
Right.
And with a sharp knife, you can cut these up however you'd like. You could cut it up into roast like this. You could cut it into chops, whatever thickness you'd like. Or else you can cut some of it into some strips for stir fry, or else cubes for kebabs.
Well, that sounds easy enough. How about cooking? Do you have any tips for cooking pork?
Sure. Well, let's start with this pork roast. You can cook this a variety of ways, in the oven, on the grill, or in the crock pot. Let's start with in the oven.
Okay.
If I'm going to put it in the oven, I'm going to cook it on a rack in a shallow pan. I like to coat it with seasonings and then put it in a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes per pound.
Okay.
The most important thing about cooking pork is to cook it to medium doneness.
Right.
We recommend using a meat thermometer, and you'll want to cook it till the finished temperature of 160 degrees. For a thicker cut and a bigger cut like this, you'll want to take it actually out of the oven or off the grill before it reaches 160, probably at about 145, 10 or 15 degrees below that. Well, the crock pot is another great way for cooking pork roast, especially for our busy days anyway. What we recommend is putting your roast in the crock pot and then adding about a cup of liquid. That could be water, broth, fruit juice, whatever.
And you said apple juice?
Apple juice is wonderful.
Okay.
It's wonderful. And about a cup per pound of meat anyway. Turn it on low, and 6 to 8 hours later, you have a wonderful pork roast that you could have for one meal and the next day chop it up, and the leftovers are wonderful for another meal.
All right, Joyce, I'm getting hungry. How about some pork chops?
Well, let's cook some.
Okay.
You know, pork chops are so easy to prepare. You can prepare them on the stove, you can prepare them on the grill, or in the oven, or crock pot. Again, the main thing to remember is not to overcook them. Cook them to medium doneness. You want that finished temperature to be 160 degrees.
Okay.
Other things that you can do is, you know, add your seasonings, rub the outside surface. You can marinate them ahead of time too. That's another fun thing to do, to add some flavors and give it a little bit different flavor.
You said you like to do this overnight if you
I
can.
do. Make sure you put them in the refrigerator, keep them safe. And the other thing is to watch your marinades. If you're making a marinade yourself, go low on the oil or fat because we don't want to add a lot of extra fat to that marinade, or else look for low-fat marinades in the grocery store.
Okay, so some different ways to get some flavor in there. Is there anything else we should know about pork?
Well, you know, I think we've covered a lot of it. Pork is a very nutritious food. It can fit into a healthful diet. And again, some of the key points are to select lean cuts.
Okay.
Remember your serving size. Remember that deck of cards, 3-ounce portion.
Right.
And then cook it right. Use low-fat cooking methods. And if you do that, pork is wonderful, can fit into a healthy diet.
Okay, and do you have a website where people can go to get recipes and information?
We sure do. Go to iowapork.org.
Okay, Joyce from the
Thank
Iowa
you.
Pork Producers Association, thank you very much.
Thank you.